All right, welcome back to another episode of Lock Stars. I'm Justin.
I'm Jordan.
And let's get started. And we're back. All right. All right, how you doing, man? How you doing this?
I'm alright.
You all right? All right. Dude, there's just a lot of regionals this weekend, this past weekend.
Yeah, a lot of regionals, nationals going on.
Yeah, what nationals are going on right now?
Mainly in like South America.
Oh, okay, the place.
Like, Honduras,
with all the trash players.
Uruguay, just a lot in South America.
Okay, well, did you get a chance to look at any of the decks coming out of South America?
Yeah, well, I should say like also in Europe too, a couple of nationals. But yeah, most of them. I mean, it's pretty much what you would expect: Snake Eye decks, Tenpai decks. Just the typical stuff. Regional events, there are, the occasional, like rogue stats, like Black Wings, maybe, not Black Wings, Raid Raptors. Someone topped with a Tearlament deck, someone topped with a Paleozoic deck. Just like other decks, like here and there, but mainly Snake Eye, Voiceless, and Tenpai.
Not a whole lot of news comes out of South America in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh.
No, they're not really good with like their streaming. Pretty much only really like the European countries really like are consistent with their streaming, because they also like stream a couple of their what they call their like open series, which are basically just regional events. They might have, the German Open or French Open. They're basically just regional events. But, sometimes they stream those. But in America, I mean, we're good at streaming too, but we don't stream, like, regional events. So those are usually run by, like, I guess, I don't want to say, like, smaller card stores, but I don't think they find it worth, like, streaming.
Well, okay, that sounds fun, but in other news, what's our topic today, man? Let's just get.
We got a video coming from Jesse Cotton.
Okay, all right. What do you know about Jesse Cotton? What do you know about this guy?
Jesse Cotton's obviously one of the best, or considered one of the best duelists, basically in the game's history. He has countless regional tops, countless YCS tops, second place finishes. I think he's I want to say 5 or 6 time YCS champion.
That's insane. That's
yeah.
Insane. I didn't even know that.
He's consistent. He puts up numbers.
Okay, yeah, dude puts up numbers, dude.
Yeah,
He's been playing for a long time.
He's been playing for, I want to say, like almost. I mean, throughout almost the entirety, I guess. Way longer than us.
Right. That's absolutely insane. So I mean, what is he talking about?
I guess he's talking about what he personally, last week we covered, like pros and cons, like is Yu-Gi-Oh worth it? And right now, like he's talking about what he personally hates about the Yu-Gi-Oh.
Okay. That's pretty much the introduction of the video.
Right.
You want to kind of
I want to see like are his like hates and criticisms valid?
Okay, for sure. Live reaction.
Right.
Live reaction. We do it live. Shout out to Mr. O'Reilly, I'm sorry. I don't know what was that dude's name. Some Fox News reporter that came from that. Anyway, all right, well, let's just get right into this video. All right.
Every small action makes a difference, and oftentimes, skillful choices will prevail. A lack of barriers in deck construction will also let creativity flourish, and innovators are frequently rewarded. All of these things combined are a mere fraction of the elements in Yu-Gi-Oh! That I love. But there's one thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! That I absolutely detest. In Yu-Gi-Oh! The way you interact with your opponent can be classified into 3 categories. A removal effect that'll kill your opponent's monsters, a negation effect that'll stop your opponent's abilities, or a floodgate effect that'll restrict the actions your opponent is allowed to make.
All right, we'll pause right there. I mean, do you agree with that initial assessment?
Well, yeah. Those are, interacting with your opponent is, what makes Yu-Gi-Oh, one of the a fun game to play. And remove, and he's right. There might. I'm pretty sure there are a little bit more. I want to say maybe but he pretty much got
Right,
the full,
right.
like.
I think I personally like the floodgate effect. I don't like my opponent playing, to be honest. To be honest with you.
I mean, the floodgates. I mean, no one's really a fan of like floodgates. I'm sure.
That's a lie.
I would say you're in the minority.
Oh well.
Floodgates can be very annoying.
I
That's why
love
people hate
floodgates.
things like stun decks. Which is
I'm a very simple man, dude. I like very simple wins. I like it easy to win. I want me to be playing and you not to be playing.
I mean, if you feel that way, sure. Not everyone feels that way. Like, of course, when I, don't get me wrong, when I activated summon limit or rivalry of warlords or goes in match,
Yeah, that feels good, right? That feels good.
it feels all, it feels good, but it feels better when you can actually like have some back and forth with your like opponent.
No, not at all. I don't want any back and forth. I want me to play and you lose. That's just,
I mean, well, sure, yeah. You're definitely in the minority. That's why Konami is really cracking down on floodgates.
well. I mean,
I don't know if you like how much you kept up with like the past few ban lists, but they've put some floodgates to 1 and others banned. Like Summon Limit got banned. Anti-spell got put to 1. Tikaboo got put to 1.
Anti-spell?
Yeah, got put to
I
1.
love that card, dude. That sucks. It really sucks.
Tikaboo got put to 1. What else? Goals and matches is already at 1 from a few ban lists ago.
Right.
No, they're really cracking down on a lot of these floodgates.
Okay. Well, I mean, don't you think it's kind of? I mean, I guess he kind of gets into it in this list, in that second point, because it seems like to me ever since he got back into the game, it's a lot of like boards to play past. Like it's a lot of cards nowadays have some type of negation effect. They could play during your turn before you even start your turn. Before you even get into your main phase.
Yeah,
some cards just like they just start going off.
Yeah, I get it. A lot of these decks they do a lot. So slowing them down can feel like satisfying. That's why Stun has really made a big resurgence right now. Like it's actually like a viable deck that you can possibly play against.
Mm-hmm.
It's just Runic Stun. No one like for all of time. No one likes Stun players. No one likes those guys. Like, it can feel nice when you want, when you don't want to think,
Mm-hmm.
or you don't want to like play with your opponent, but like, no, just don't play those cards. Don't play those cards, or at least don't play a stun deck.
Yeah, some decks can get pretty. I will agree with you on that, but like, I mean, I like floodgates, though. I like floodgates. It's just I find it particularly fun when it's like devastating. Mm-hmm. That's when, but like, I mean, if you could play past it, that could be really fun too. Like,
and there's also like what they call like floating floodgates, like floating effects.
What is that? What do you mean?
Like dimensional shifter.
Oh, sure.
That's a flood. That's a floodgate, and you can't really do anything against that except like called by the grave.
That's
like
fair.
Once that's in effect, like you're pretty much stuck with it until like it entirely resolves.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. All right, well, let's get back into this video. See what's up.
Of late, the Yu-Gi community has a lot less of these type of abilities. But while an abundance
Thank
of negates
God.
in the game creates an unfun environment, this isn't my biggest problem with the game. Floodgates, a whole other form of interrupt the community
My favorite
has been crusading against, the scourge of this game. Lingering floodgates, a type of effect.
I wouldn't say it's well, I guess it's the scourge of the game. Yeah.
Floodgate.
Like what we talked about.
I think
before,
it's
like,
only I feel like it's only a scourge when in like today's game, because like decks can do so much nowadays, and when your entire mechanic is based around like maybe monsters, but whatever a particular floodgate can stop, then I can see how that'd be irritating. but
Like, I don't really necessarily like mind yeah. I mean, I hate floodgates, but I wouldn't say they're like the scourge of the game, because I feel like it's just part of like any game where it's just like an effect that just doesn't allow you to do something.
mm-hmm.
You know, I don't mind.
Maybe if it's like a game winner, like when what was that one trap Vanity's
Emptiness.
Yeah, that was a pretty devastating card.
Right,
back
right,
in the
right.
day.
That,
So,
yeah, that was a very unfair, especially
like whoever played that card first, pretty much like
almost won.
Yeah, just damn near won.
Yeah, but as long as they're out, but like he is lingering floodgates. Yeah, like we talk about like dimensional shifter, because you can't do anything about those. At least things like robbery goes in anti spell. At least you can like get rid of those cards.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
But a thing, a floating or lingering floodgates, as he says, no.
Gotcha. Let's continue. We do it live.
It restricts the opponent's actions for a set amount of time. These cards activate and then cannot be interacted with for the duration of the restriction. This means if a lingering floodgate is a monster and you'd use its ability, but then is later killed in battle or by card effects, the restriction still applies. It does not go away. It is in place for the entirety of the duration that it lists. And I think that is just ridiculous. So this isn't something that's been away from the public.
Like, don't get me wrong. Like, activating a shifter against like things like tier limit were like top tier.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people just don't like it. It's just nobody likes playing against that.
Yeah, it can be pretty rough to play around. Yeah, because
like you can't even really play around it. Like you can't play around. Like only.
Oh yeah, unless you have
There's only a few cards you could probably play around.
that other. There's a hand trap that stops hand traps, right? Or like that one.
Call by the Grave.
Well, yeah, called by the Grave. Isn't there a ghost one that stops? No, that negates monster effects. Ghost Girl.
Ghost Mourner.
Yeah,
But that negates like face up monster effects.
Oh, I'm sorry. Whatever. Okay.
Yeah, bro, get good.
All right, whatever.
People have talked about these cards quite a bit, and many have been banned, but I still think there are a lot of criminal cards. The game would be a lot better without existing. Some very big common ones you may see in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now are cards like Dimensional Barrier, Dimension Shifter, Joel Lockbird. How about Hot Red Dragon, Archer Fiend, King Calamity? That one's a
let's
killer.
pause here.
Like the ability for Centurion just to summon Calamity like casually is so annoying. So annoying.
What does that card exactly do?
When it's summoned, it's an activation because it has a colon. So when it's summoned, your opponent can't activate cards or effects for the rest of the turn. And Centurion have the
Cards are effect. They can't activate anything.
They can't activate anything. It's a turn skipper.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I never knew that card did that.
Yeah, because like
it's
it's only because you need they basically like cheat it out.
Oh well, it's
like,
supposed to
like,
be.
I think you need like 2 tuners.
Oh,
like, even
gotcha.
summon it.
Well, yeah, it's such a powerful effect because it's supposed to be hard to summon.
Exactly.
But like,
and it's only supposed to be summoned like really on the player's turn. Centurion have a way to cheat it out on the opponent's turn and makes that whole turn skip.
I like that term, cheated out. That's
like
well,
it's
do you
ridiculous.
put all these like on the same level though? Not all these like lingering floodgates are on the same level.
Oh yeah, sure.
I think Dimensional Barrier is a pretty fair card, to be honest with you.
I mean, Dimensional Barrier is the fact is it's not future proof.
No card is.
I get.
Like,
I mean,
what,
you can
excuse me, what do you mean by future proof though?
future proof. Like if this card. Okay, so imagine you come up with a card that said, let's say, I don't know,
That's like really good at its time or really bad at its
sure.
time.
Let's just say it's like really good at its time or really bad. It doesn't matter how it is at its time. Like, but as the game goes on, as cards get more powerful, then this particular card might get more powerful, right? So anti-spell, right? Even though at the time it doesn't really, that time when it was released, it doesn't really matter if you had to wait a turn to set a spell card. Like, it's because you weren't really getting killed on in a couple turns. If I had to set my Regeki right now, that's fine. I'll just get you next turn.
Right. All right.
But now that we have things like pendulum monsters that can't even be set, So I wouldn't be able to like activate my pendulum cards, and a lot of cards these days, depending on the deck, really relies on its spells. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going first and I flip up anti-spell during your turn when you have a lot of spells to resolve, then it's not really, then you basically lose. Mm-hmm. So a card like that isn't necessarily future-proof. Dimensional Barrier isn't future-proof, even though at the time, where it stopped a bunch of summoning mechanics, it's not really, now we have things like Branded, where fusion summoning is literally like all it does, and it's all it can do, because it literally like locks you into fusion summoning.
Right.
Now that I activate Dimensional Barrier, now your turn's basically done, unless you can pull, you can probably put up a few bodies.
Right. But you can say that about any card though. Like, and any card isn't future proof, because they're always going to be coming out with new stuff and new ways to stop your opponent. So, that's pretty much what the ban list is for. So they're able to do that kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but I just don't put all these like lingering things on the same level. There's what was that first one he mentioned?
He mentioned Shifter. Yeah, Shifter.
Yeah, I think Shifter is a lot more, devastating as a card.
Sure, yeah.
I think Dimensional Barrier is completely fair, to be honest with you. I think that's a completely fair card. You could say what is this? Red Dragon Calamity. That's not. Obviously that wasn't future proof. It was designed.
Yeah.
To be.
Just summon, like
it's hard to summon, but
exactly.
Now they came out with an archetype that makes it.
Piss easy to summon.
I think Droll.
That's especially not future proof, because the game moves fast, and then now we have cards that specifically can summon monsters on the opponent's turn.
Right. Okay. Well, it's a lot of good points being made here. Let's continue the video. See what's up.
But also terrible, or Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. If you sat across in these cards in the last
card, I do hate that.
Had rebooted, you could have been Artifact Scythed. None of these cards are fun to play against.
Artifact Scythe, that got banned, I think, as soon as I got back into the game, at the end of tournament format, or maybe even before then. I'm not really too sure, but I used to love Scythe. But I guess. Yeah, that's not really future proof either.
Yeah, it was good for what
it wasn't even good when it came out. I don't think so. People were just, it wasn't really that big of a deal.
The artifacts.
Because now our entire deck.
Yeah, the artifacts was kind of a rogue deck.
Right.
They weren't even none of the artifacts were even used in a in a side.
No, they were.
Were they?
Yeah, they were.
When they
at
came
some
out?
point, yeah.
At some point, yes.
Not when they came out, sure.
Talking about when they first came out, like you say, it wasn't a good deck. Max C, that's been a very good. Well,
Max C has been
it's always been a good card, right?
Well, no, not when it first.
Not when it first. Well, okay, fair.
Even during, I think, Dragon Ruler format, it wasn't even that good.
Mm-hmm. Red Reboot, that's been a powerful card though.
I love Red Reboot.
That isn't that.
But the fact is, if you can't activate, you can't activate trap cards for the duration. That is a bit much, but I do like it. Other than that, I do like it.
Yeah, all right. Let's continue the video here.
And I don't get it, because in many cases these cards have such very limited counterplay. The ability to interact with them is so little. A card like Dimensional Barrier is so hard for you to play around. Mono Synchro, Mono Exceed, or Mono Fusion, or AS Mono Ritual as well. You have almost nothing you could do. In other Floodgate cases, like Summon Limit or Anti-Spell Fragrance or Skill Drain, which I'm not really advocating for either here, but I still think they're better than these cards. Barring Anti-Spell Fragrance, you could have back removal like Lightning Storm, like Harpy's Feather Duster, that'll kill the Floodgates.
Like we were saying, a lot of these, Dimension Barrier can't be played around. If my opponent, no matter what, if my opponent, draws into it, and like I said, my deck only relies on one summoning mechanic, then I'm almost pretty much done. And a lot of times I'm locked into, Branded locks you into fusions.
Yeah, I'm very curious on the solution here, because, there's always going to be cards like that. I don't know how you not design, cards that stop your opponent, and they can be devastating, but how do you how do you get around that? Maybe he mentions that in the video. We got to continue watching.
You'll get past it, no problem. In the past, is backing those Floodgates up with negates, and that wasn't a viable strategy. But if negates aren't going to be in the game as much, then that's not a big of a problem. However, a card that doesn't need to stay on the field means those don't work. And in many cases, the cards that exist in these Floodgate forms don't have a lot of pre-existing ways that you can interact with.
Yeah, see, there's like no way to interact with like things like Deep Barrier or Shifter. Like you said, there's Called by the Grave for like hand traps. But really, other than that, you can't really interact with these lingering effects.
Yeah, that's very. I mean, yeah, that's very true.
Like a lot of people do,
but don't you think that's part of like the entire like strategy making of the game, where these cards exist, so you have to choose what deck to play around not only very powerful decks at the time, but also the cards that are going to be used against those decks.
Sure, yeah. That's fair for competitive play. Even I've watched some other Jesse videos. He specifically mentioned how he doesn't play decks that allow you only one summoning mechanic because D barrier exists. I think I heard him specifically say he won't play branded because of D barrier, because that card can just stop you outright. But people also say, it is a necessary evil. But I think that just speaks to the game as a whole. Like, I get it. It does. Like, DBR might be a necessary card to stop, a few decks in their tracks. Even there's this other card called it's called Simul Archfiends or something like that. Where it's almost like D barrier, but also includes like link monsters. Basically, if your opponent controls this type of monster, they can't summon those. They can't summon that type of monster for the rest of the turn if they control that type of monster.
Okay.
So, those type of effects are. I mean, they might be necessary for the game, like a necessary evil, but it does sometimes make it a little bit unfun to play, especially when there's no, in my opinion, there's no like downside. I think that's the big thing. Like, I mean, D-Bear.
What do you mean downside?
Like if I activate D-Bear, if I'm playing Snake Eyes and I'm citing D-Bear against for like branded,
sure,
there's no downside to that because I don't like. I mean, it says
there's no cost.
No,
what do you mean?
Hold on, because I'm not playing fusion monsters at all.
Oh,
you get what I'm
that's
saying?
the fun of it. Yes,
like, and and it's not, if there was like something where I can't summon, like if DBR said something like, oh, like none of these types can be summoned, or
I feel like y'all just hating on D barrier, bro. I love that card. That is one of my favorite trap cards in the game.
And of course, some decks are stronger than others, or some decks are built in a way where some cards are going to be better in those. Like D-Shifter is obviously going to be better in Flowanderies and Kashtira, just by the way they're built.
Right. Okay. Well, let's see what else he says about it. I'm trying to get to a solution here.
The thing is here, shutting off an entire avenue of play in a turn is only big if Konami designs decks that only take one avenue of play, but it happens to be the case very often. I guess could be a whole other design point Konami may have to look at in the future, but I think it'd be a lot easier just to remove these cards that are overbearingly restrictive from the game in general.
That's interesting. That's an interesting point. Let's take that off. Removing them completely from the game. I don't think I agree with that. That seems like a weird take. What do you think? What do you think about that?
Removing like Floodgates completely from the game. I could agree. I think I could agree with that.
Well, maybe not necessarily like Floodgates. He said like these overly restrictive cards, something like D barrier. Maybe he means like like all like cards like Shifter, Calamity, things like that. But I mean, yeah, I mean because they're just good cards like that come in and out of the game. Excuse me, in and out of the meta all the time. So they may be good one format and they may not be good the next. You know, there's been plenty of decks that use multiple mechanics, like that pendulum deck, with the wizards.
Right, the Pepe deck.
Yeah, the Pepe deck, right? So it just depends on the time, right?
Sure, it might depend on the time, but I think in almost any time, like there's this card that just got unbanned called it's like Protos is his name. And what it basically does, it can lock you out of summoning certain attributes, not only for basically 2 turns. So like even if I just summon it on my turn, and you basically can't summon certain cards of the attribute on your turn either, which is like, and it was just unbanned, like out of
based Konami.
Like, well, no, like and it's not really. It's not really a threat right now, but I don't think that type of card specifically should not like exist. You should not be able to lock me out, of a certain thing during your turn and my turn.
Why not?
What? Because that's unfair.
Life's unfair.
Like what? Like what? Like
if I want to win, I don't want to be fair.
No, if you're playing something like Trap Tricks, and some dude says like, "Oh, I just dropped a Protoss on you. Now you can't summon Earth monsters." You don't think that's unfair?
No, that's unfair to me. But I want to be the one doing that. That's the issue. That's the issue. I mean, in all seriousness, I don't know. I just think that's a pretty like bad take. It's more of a personal thing, I guess. I kind of like these cards. Not like that are overly, I guess, restrictive. Something like Protos, yeah, that does sound like an overly restrictive card. Something like D-Berry, I don't think it is.
I think there should at least be some drawback.
What? Like, what do you mean?
I don't know. Like, maybe like if D-Berry could, if it said something like, I don't know, like none of these type of monsters could be summoned during this turn, or you have to discard this many cards. Something.
Well, doesn't it? I mean, it also negates your monsters, though. That's the drawback, right?
That's a bad drawback, though.
Why?
That's not.
It negates
drawback.
everybody's monsters. What are you talking about?
No, that's a bad drawback. You sound stupid,
bro. You sound stupid.
Like
you said there needs to be a drawback, and there's a drawback. What's
no, like even me, I'm playing. I play right now I'm building Tenpai.
Mm-hmm.
I just slapping, and if I have Tenpai deck going against going against Branded, I just flip D-Berry. You're done.
Yeah, you're finished.
Like
LU, bro. LU.
Like it feels good to win,
Get
but
good.
like it's unfair. Like
I don't think D-Berry.
Like I feel bad activating that card.
D-Berry is not an unfair card. I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, it works better in some decks over others, but that's like a lot of cards.
Sure.
So I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting take at least.
Don't you think it's better just for a deck to use its own engine to obviously you have your non-engine. But don't you think it's better for cards that don't like linger to like determine a game? Like if I'm a Tillerman player, like he opened Shifter, both games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point. But it very much depends. I guess there's like all kinds of factors, but I think that very much depends on the format. D-Berry used to not always be a game-ending card.
Okay, and
when it come out, Zoo format.
I think it came out. No, it came out before that. It came out sometime during the Pendulum era.
Oh yeah, that's fair. But yeah, it wasn't always that game ending card.
And don't get me wrong, I do like some cards do need to exist to like check a deck, like Drawing Lockbird versus something like Super Heavy Samurai or Mana Diem.
I think it's not the cards necessarily. It's just, it seems to me, it's the nature of the game that's the
Sure,
issue.
yeah, that too. It's the nature
Right.
of the game. That's why, like,
Even without these floodgates, like a game lasts 3 turns at most, maybe 4.
sure, yeah.
Unless you both like are doing like completely trash, or excuse me, you both are like drawing completely trash, but that's what makes it. That's what makes these cards toxic. It's really like you need to fix, like,
Sure, yeah.
these archetypes that are coming out.
You know, if there's, I forgot what the video was called, but basically Joshua Schmidt, he made his own like custom ban list to try to fix the game. Obviously, it's his opinion, but to try to fix the game. And you know, if you look at the list he made, there are so many like banned cards and cards put to 1, and you know, but you know, it's you know, that type of thing is necessary to like fix the game.
Right. I mean, that's the function of the ban list. So, I don't
It's
know.
supposed to be the function, but it's not. But
What do you think the function is?
I mean, you know, that's a whole other topic. But the function of the ban list is to help balance the game. But a lot of times is, you know, used to push a product or,
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah.
or
I mean,
even
yeah.
even you know, like,
Yeah, they give me multiple functions. I think it's a fine function. I mean, that's
you know, people even like determine for a ban list, if the card if it's an expensive card, they won't hit it. Not too soon. If it's
Right.
if it's a
mean-
cheap card, they're gonna hit it.
right. I mean,
Like-
isn't that the kind of the nature of like all, like I know Pokemon, right? You can't really use older cards, right? Is that the? I don't know if you know that game. You can only use like certain
Well, it
sets.
depends. Well, yeah, it's like set rotation, but they do reprint like older cards for
Right,
set
right.
rotation.
Yeah, it's set rotations. You know, I mean, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, right.
You know, so we can let's get back into the video.
Probably the least interactable out of all of them, as well as shutting off an entire summoning type and effect for the whole turn, means that entire archetypes crumble, especially when some of the restrictions Konami's been giving to decks is locking them into their extra deck
Like I
summoning
said,
method for the
like,
turn.
that
Which,
card
like,
literally just
I
locks you
get
into
you want to stop them
fusions.
from being these crazy combo decks, but then why does a card like this exist that now gives silver bullets to every single deck to counter yours? And not just like silver.
What? That's such a. I mean, okay.
That's
I
a good-
He needs to expand on that take. That's a weird take. D-Bear came out way before Brandon.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. It's not future proof. And then like, why are you making a deck? Like, you can make a deck that like locks you into a certain type or a certain summoning mechanic. That's fine. But you get like now you have D-Bear that just stops those type of decks.
Okay.
I shouldn't have to, like, if I was a branded player, I would feel bad that I just activated a spell that locks me into fusion summoning, and now you just activate a card that says no, you can't fusion summon.
Okay, well, how is Konami? Okay, maybe I'm playing devil's advocate here, but how is Konami supposed to anticipate these kinds of things, right? What year did
What are you talking about?
Okay,
It's their card pool.
okay,
So
but
hold on. So
D-Berry was made years ago.
hold on.
So
okay,
am I supposed to
consider.
hold on? Am I supposed to, when making new archetypes, am I supposed to consider every card that could potentially stop that archetype or could potentially be like toxic into the game, even though it wasn't toxic then, but it could be toxic now? That stumps creativity.
Okay, maybe not every single card, but D-Bear is a pretty prevalent card.
Okay, but that still stumps creativity. This is.
Okay, like you can
Am I
say
not supposed to make a fully fusion deck or a fully Xyz deck because D-Berry exists?
No, that's fine. You can that's fine, but you still have to consider other, like, if you're making a deck that can lock you into a summoning, and then you have another card can stop that summoning, I think you should consider that. If it locks you into it, like, and branded, not only branded, because branded has a lot of cards that it can interact with that can, there was the whole Cartesia and Quem. Those are branded cards, or considered in the branded deck, the branded Despia deck. There are also tuners, right? So if you're gonna make cards like those that mix well together, why not like make them able to summon like use multiple mechanics? But no, you just made a whole deck. You even pushed a whole deck that specifically locks you into fusions. But then you have things like D barrier.
Okay,
You have don't get me wrong. There's always going to be, at least for now, there's always going to be cards that counter a whole like mechanic or whole playstyle. But if you don't have any, if you at least don't consider, okay, so like D Shifter, right? D Shifter is a card where you just you have to have no cards in your graveyard to use it, right? So it's basically only decent turn one. So I think even though D Shifter is an annoying card to deal with, I think that is a good restriction on it. That way you're not able to activate at any time, right?
I mean, I see your point, but I think it's unreal. I think it's unrealistic to like stump Konami on creating archetypes with major. I mean, with every strategy has its major vulnerability. Its greatest strength, it's going to be its greatest yeah, exactly.
Sure, yeah, that's,
I know that's cliche to say, but like,
no, yeah, you're right. That's fine, but something with a lingering effect specifically is because it's hard to enter. It's hard to counter. That's the whole point.
Okay, yeah, it can be hard to counter. I think that's fine.
I mean, I don't really think that's fine. Like, I should be able. Like, of course, we have like cross out, sure. But it's just you shouldn't. There shouldn't be cards that are just so hard to just counter that I just lose to.
Sure. I mean, yes, that's true. I think that's when it's very generic, right? If that makes sense. Like Vanity's Emptiness is a very generic. It's a very generic card. D Barrier is not so generic. It's specific to what's the effect?
You activate it and you negate. Your opponent can't summon that type, and the effects on the field of that type are negated
on for the turn.
For the turn, yes.
Right. So that's a very it's a lot less generic than Vanity's Emptiness, right?
I would disagree.
You choose a type of monster and it only lasts for the turn and it negates all of them on board, right? So
that's basically Vanity's Emptiness.
No, that's wrong. That's all special summon monsters.
Okay, no, I get
and it stays on the board.
I understand that. I understand that, but I think that's what makes Vanity's Emptiness like slightly less toxic than D Barrier.
You think Vanity's Emptiness is less
D-Barrier,
toxic than D Barrier?
Yes.
That's an L take, dude.
No, because D Barrier can be interacted with. I mean, I'm sorry. Vanity's Emptiness can be interacted with. D Barrier can't be interacted with except with things like cross out.
Yeah, but it's very restricted. It's still more. It's still more of a limited card than Vanity's Emptiness.
Sure. But I mean, in a sense, you can argue D Barrier is more restricted because you can't interact with it. And I would disagree. Like, D Barrier is a very generic card.
Okay, I still don't understand how Konami's supposed to anticipate these things, right? You want them to restrict their creativity just to for a few cards in the game that could be used.
No.
I mean, who would expect? Isn't Cold Wave supposed to be good right now? Or recently, or Heat Wave? Yeah, my bad. So how are you supposed to anticipate that? That was one of the first cards in the game, right?
I mean, Well, sure, yeah. But Heat Wave is still, first of all, Heat Wave has to be activated at the start of your main phase, so it has to be the first card you activate. So
Sure.
and it's only
But my point is that you don't know what cards are going to be good in the future. What cards could be devastating. What cards aren't going to be. Vanity's Emptiness was a trash card at first, right?
right,
And then once something like, because it started to be used during the Cliffort format, right?
right.
So how are you supposed to anticipate that?
No, but the point is that like you fix the game as it goes along, as you go along.
Oh, so
That's why Vanity Emptiness is banned.
So the solution is the ban list.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. All right, cool.
But not only, but before we start again, but like it's not only the ban list. Like you still consider the way certain cards interact with each other when you're creating. Of course, you don't you can't consider every card in the game, but you should consider certain cards. That's why Bonfire can only be activated once per turn.
I mean, sure. I mean, just all right. Just make every deck use every type of mechanic. Then. Let's do that. Let's do that. That's what
I would love that.
That way, Deep Berry isn't.
I mean, I have the most fun with those decks. Like, I can Exceed summon, I can Link summon, I can Fusion summon, I can potentially Pendulum summon. I would love that.
Right. Let's get back to the video.
But Dimensional Barrier isn't alone. Another big one that I really hate, and I guess is a little more interactable, is Abyss Dweller, a card I've ranted about nonstop. And this one appeals more to me because, thankfully, people don't always play it that much, and 2 level 4 monsters being required for someone makes it not as generic as something like Dimensional Barrier. But as someone who enjoys combo decks and graveyard-based decks, staring down this is a pain in the ass. Because you still can't interact.
I got to disagree a little bit on Abyss Dweller. Because Abyss Dweller I can't say it can only be summoned in a certain type of deck, but you have to have the ability to summon it. Obviously, if you can summon 2 level 4s, but not every deck has like 2 level 4s, and are also able to fit it in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like Tillerman format, the only deck that can really counter it was, at least to my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong on this, but the only deck that can really counter it was Flowan Dorigas, and that was because of Shifter and a few of its other cards, and that deck was not able to summon from the extra deck at all because of its own the way it works,
right?
Or its own card effects,
right? I mean,
it can be annoying to play against because
yeah. So I'm not understanding respect him as a player, obviously, but I'm not really understanding his points here because he seems like he's hating and any card that prevents that stops your opponent in any sense, whether that turns off any card that turns off a certain part of the game, he seems not to like.
No, it's really more of the lingering floodgates, as you said.
All right. So what doesn't count as a lingering floodgate then?
Like rivalry.
Okay.
Because it stays face up.
Fair point. Well, I wouldn't. Yes, Abyss Dweller is a lingering floodgate, but at the same time, it's not. It's pretty. You need to be again, like you said, you need to be able to summon it.
No, yeah, but it is a lingering.
It's a lingering effect, but that doesn't mean lingering effects are bad though. You still need to be able to summon it, and it can be easily stopped.
Not necessarily. Of course, things like your effect negation, they can be easily stopped.
Sure. All right.
But it's not like things like if this card stays face up on the field, then you negate graveyard effects. It's just I activate this, no graveyard effects for you.
Guys, where's my camera here? If you're liking these takes, like and subscribe and comment what you think. But all right, let's continue with this video.
Spells. So you were limited to, I guess now Metal Tronus, but before Forbidden Chalice and Forbidden Droplet. And then maybe there's some counterplay mind games with Infinite Impermanence versus Kaiju where you could try get them with those, though neither were foolproof plans and usually weren't with the spot playing because they weren't foolproof. And given that you just had so few options, there was still a decent chance that the Dweller would resolve against you. And if your deck needed graveyard effects, which is a lot of decks, you just couldn't do anything. But the thing to note here is, on the topic of Dweller, people have stopped talking about it. You know, go back to tier format, and this card was on people's radar as a card that could potentially get banned because its overbearing presence on that format was very noticeable. And while in specifically tier format, it's arguable that it kept it in check and was actually healthy for the game, in most cases, that's not going to be the case. Tier was the exception because it was so ridiculously powerful that it could bypass the overbearing effects and you couldn't use your graveyard, despite graveyard being the main aspect of tier elements. And I think a card like this exists.
Yeah, I think something like that is like what he mentioned. It just depends on what's it depends on what's like actually part of the format or how the game is anticipated to, like where it's anticipated to go. You know, like I said before, things like the Super Heavy Samurai deck and the Manadium deck. You know, John Lockbird almost like stopped those decks straight in its tracks, which is really necessary sometimes. And like he said, like tier was so overwhelming that Dweller was, you know, a good counter for Dweller, and Shifter are good counters for that deck. But
Right, so I think the issue is it's the decks, it's the formats. It's not really the individual cards, right? The cards are going to thrive or be useless in some formats and others. So, I mean,
fair. It's just
the nature. It's the nature of Yu-Gi-Oh. So
fair. But I do think some cards are, you know, they are very unfair in what they do, especially when they're lingering effects. That's why you have things like Max C banned. At least in the TCG.
I think it's unfair that Soul Charge banned, but you don't see me complaining.
What? What are you talking about?
That's a whole other topic. It's a whole other topic. We're gonna move on.
Comment L Justin for that take.
Oh, Maria. Comment W if you think Soul Charge should be brought back
comment
to the
2
game.
L's for that take.
No, big W. Here, I got you. 2 L's.
L charge.
2 L's. Big W. Anyway, moving on.
Thing from format to format is something that is very much a problem. We've seen Dweller pop up time and time again as something that is not fun to play against. If you were Salad vs. Orcust, this was like a defining card in the matchup in 2019 that was really not easy to deal with, and you had limited ability to play around. That it begs the question, why does this card need to exist? There could be something better than that. I'd rather there was graveyard removal, rather. Cards like Melodious Schuberta are really cool. They can be crippling to graveyard decks, but if your opponent is able to layer their plays effectively, they could maneuver around something like Schuberta or like DD Crow or Bestials. But Dweller is just blanket, you have nowhere to go. And the problem here is that these exist for several different functions in Yu-Gi-Oh! And they all need to go. Artifact Lancia is another example of a lingering floodgate that says you cannot banish for the turn. And like Shifter, it's almost no counterplay. You need Call by the Grave, and that's almost it in terms of how you can stop it. And though we don't see right now a big banish deck, imagine if every single card in your deck as a cost required you to banish like the top card of your deck face down. Would that deck just be unplayable? Or would that deck automatically just have like a 33% loss factor anytime this card was being played against them or an opponent's deck? It's almost like the Ash Bandit Fusion thing, except more real because you have no counterplay. Now, Konami could design decks that don't have weaknesses to the lingering floodgates that exist, but that's almost impossible considering there's lingering floodgates for almost every aspect. Even Link Summoning now has similar Archifiends, which is pretty specific in what it does, so it hasn't been a problem yet. It's not very future-proof. There's cards that stop Graveyard, like Dimension Shifter, Different Dimension Ground, Silent Graveyard. There's cards that stop Extra Deck, like Dimensional Barrier as well. There's cards that stop Whole Effects, period, like Calamity. All Summoning, period, like Gimmick Puppet. Cards that stop Searching, like Droll and Mistaken Arrest. There's cards that stop Banishing, like Artifact Lancia. There's just so many. It's likely it took the effect of Threatening Roar and said, okay, sure, Battle Phase isn't too important in Yu-Gi-Oh! Let's make Threatening Roar good and make it stop everything else. And that's what all these other cards are.
You didn't know Threatening Roar is actually supposed to be good versus Tenpai right now?
Oh, really?
Yeah, because, you know, Tenpai is it's a Battle Phase deck. So you activate, you activate Threatening Roar, they're basically
Again.
they're basically done. I mean, it's actually like a legitimate card. You know, there's easier way. There are like more practical waves.
Bro, that card
You know,
came out in
like-
like every structure deck, every
Yeah,
starter deck
yeah.
ever.
But there are more practical ways to stop Tempai. You know, like D barrier does stop Tempai. Depending on when you activate it, D barrier can stop.
What if you're on stream and someone threatening roars you? Hell, you just bad at the game.
Yeah, I would feel embarrassed if someone just threatening more me and I just lost on stream. Like I would be mad.
I'd be a little salty. It's a very
You know,
wait,
but
wait,
obviously-
hey, it's a very
Hold on.
hey, no, be quiet. Be quiet.
Don't say it.
No, I'm going to say it. You're going to make this is going to happen. It's a very threatening card. Hey, bro, where you going? Bro, where you going? Come back. Bro. What are you doing?
Just play the video.
All right. I'm hilarious.
Don't see the reason why it should persist. And while we have cards on the balance that clearly have lingering floodgate effects, Konami has also kind of been going in the opposite direction with this last ban list. So 8 cards currently are banned in the TCG with lingering floodgate effects. I already talked about Artifact Scythe and Maxi being some, because those are still legal in Master Duel. Same with Red Reboot. Cold Wave is another one that is banned. Utopic Zexal, which couldn't interact with. As I thought, one of the dumbest one ever is because it just happened. That one didn't even activate. It just said, haha, you lose.
Oh, yeah.
True King of all calamities. Who doesn't love the card that says you can't play the game? And Shockmaster, another card that is just awesome. And then
Even back then, like I think when we started playing, when I read Shockmaster, I'm like, there's no way like they printed a card like this and didn't think it would be broken. Like it literally says you can't play a third of the game. You can't play a third of the cards in this game. I don't like. How could you think a card like that is just okay?
I'm wondering if other games have this problem of cards being saying you basically can't play the game or a big part of the game or completely devastate strategies. But I mean, maybe it's just the nature of card games like this.
I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure.
If you play other
analysis,
games,
no.
let us know if other card games have this problem.
Of lingering effects.
Lingering effects, preventing people from playing the game in some type of way,
But from my knowledge,
devastating
no.
certain strategies, and maybe how that's looked over the years. So, all right, let's continue.
banned and just came back. And that is Arch Nemesis Protoss. And while I'm ranting about Dweller needing to get banned and all that, this card is kind of what launched me off into this tangent, because now this has come off the list. If you're not familiar with Protoss, let me give you a quick rundown. You summon it by banishing 3 monsters with different attributes from your grave, interface, of fields. It cannot be destroyed by card effects, and then once per turn you can declare a monster attribute in the field to destroy all monsters on the field with that attribute. And then here's the kicker. Also, until the end of the next turn, so not even this turn, the next turn, neither player can special summon monsters with that attribute. Once it resolves,
So what do you think of that card?
So just to be clear, you ban so
You banish you banish cards with different attributes, summon it, and then once it's on the field, it can't be destroyed by card effects. And then once it's on the field, ignition effect, you can declare 1 attribute, destroy monsters on the field with that attribute, and then neither player can summon cards of that attribute until the end of the next turn.
When did that card come out?
I don't know. It came out
Before
Well,
tier?
I'm assuming yes,
Okay.
because I'm assuming.
I mean, yeah,
yes.
I'm not disagreeing that there's like very toxic cards that probably shouldn't be put in the game, but I think what Jesse is talking about is very umbrella, you know. I don't think all lingering floodgates are bad or toxic.
No, yeah.
be
They're not
honest with
not all of them are just like ban worthy. Let's just get rid of these. But a card like that shouldn't. Like, how could you think a card that's relatively easy? Well, I wouldn't say relatively easy to summon, and it just has a lingering effect that you can't even like stop, and it lingers until the next turn. It was just for 1 turn, sure, but it's until the next turn. Like, why would you make a card like that?
Yeah, those can be pretty toxic. I can agree with that. All right, let's finish up the video here.
Attribute, which is like so many decks. How is Konami supposed to plan around building an archetype that's limited to a single attribute? All right, like that's not going to happen for every single attribute. So every single deck that's mono attribute now will have a weakness to this card in the future. As long as
Right. Pause. Really quick. That's what I'm saying. You can't consider when building these archetypes. You can't consider every card in the game, every card that might be able to stop it. Like, it's just impossible to plan around. And you either don't make the lingering effects ever again, which maybe that's what Jesse's advocating for, or you make them like slightly less toxic, like cards that last both turns. That can be pretty toxic. I can agree with that.
Right. I think that's the point here. Like, it's not like I shouldn't have to. Like, they don't have to consider. If you're gonna make a card, the whole point, if you want to make an attribute, that's fine. That's like restricted to maybe one or if you want to make an archetype, that's restricted to one attribute or one summoning mechanic or one type or whatever. You shouldn't, at the same time, create cards that restrict you into a certain, restrict you in a certain way, especially if it's a lingering effect. You know, like D-barrier, like shouldn't have necessarily been created because like it's not.
That's an L take, dude. It's a stupid
it
take.
Have necessarily been created.
Hold on, let's finish up the video here for you. Absolutely devastating takes.
And you may say, okay, it's L1 searchable. You can search it with Nemesis Flag, meaning Flag is searchable via Bonfire versus Sprint and then Promethean Princess getting it back, which is not too hard. You can get it off of Banshee getting a Flag. You can also do a Sword Soul Chi-Shao, which gets Sword Soul Emergence, which gets Protoss. Point being, when you want to get this card, it is fairly easy to do so. And while it may not see play at the very moment, with Yu-Gi-Oh! And as a deck builder, you always want to be very forward-thinking, thinking into the potential of the future. And as someone who's not a huge fan of hand-shot formats, I'm looking to a future of the game where I can return to playing high engine counts and relying on the cards in my archetype to be problem-solving and to play through fields. Most decks won't have an in-house ability to beat Lingering Floodgates, so if I'm getting Protoss, it kind of tells me, like, maybe the way that I love playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Just will always be invalidated. Like, even if these aren't the biggest problems in each format, there will be formats where these cards always pop up because they maybe are too specific in what they do. But when they do pop up, they're never a good thing. They're almost always for the detriment of the health of the game. And I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Would be a lot better if what is ultimately the worst part of Yu-Gi-Oh! In my opinion would just be erased. And I know this would mean a rather large banning for some of these cards like Silent Graveyard, which haven't really been too playable because there are just better alternatives. I think that is still the right course of action. So let me know what you guys think. If there's a part of Yu-Gi-Oh! That you guys really hate, I'm curious to see as well, because my fixation on combo decks is a large reason why this specifically is the biggest element of Yu-Gi-Oh! I dislike. So I'm wondering.
All right. Well, that's pretty much the end of that. Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah. So like, I see his solution here. It's pretty extreme. I mean, I personally, I don't think all lingering, like I said, not all lingering effects are the same. There are toxic cards that are much too restrictive. But I think it's fine to have restricted cards in the game. He did have an interesting take on maybe having being able to play more high engine decks and having maybe in archetype solutions for things. Like maybe I think that's what he was getting at.
Right, I love that. Like I love when a deck can. I love when a deck uses its own engine to solve problems. Like I specifically chose, like when Purely first came out, I specifically chose that deck because it was pretty much like one of the only decks, at least at the time, that just used its own engine to deal with certain cards. Even though it did have like a towers like monster, but that was its own monster. Like at the time, Super Heavy Samurai was a thing, but Super Heavy Samurai was just a combo deck to summon other monsters that weren't Super Heavy Samurai.
it's pretty funny to be honest. Um, okay, I mean, what do you think about his solution?
His solution. I mean, yeah, like a lot of lingering effects like are ban worthy. Like Protos. I was just about to compare Protos to Shockmaster like that. Why would you create a card like that and thinking it was like a good thing? I feel like like they just do it for like the shock factor or like as a
Pun,
chase card. What happened?
pun intended.
No, pun unintended.
Oh, okay. Well,
But they like I said before, you said it was L take. I think D barrier shouldn't have been a card that should have been created in the first place.
I think it's a fine card to be created in the first place. I think it's
I don't-
fine to create those those kind of cards. To be honest with you,
I don't think so. Like,
Oh,
of
what?
course, don't get me wrong. It does feel good to activate D barrier and have we do love win buttons out here, but at the same time, D barrier is just like no.
okay. Well, I think there's a pretty interesting video. I agree with some things, disagree with. I mean, like anything, you disagree with some things, you agree with some others. Overall, I think it's a very interesting take. I think the blanket banning of those kind of cards, I disagree with. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's I like some of the cards he mentioned, and some of the other cards he mentioned. I understand his take. I think the solution. I think the problem overall is the format and maybe the kind of decks that come out nowadays, not necessarily the cards. But yeah, I mean, what do you think overall?
I think overall, I agree with I agree with most of what he said. Obviously there are cards that I personally like too, like Abyss Dweller, but for the most part, he is right. A lot of these lingering effects are kind of bad for the game, and they can't keep creating cards. They can't keep creating cards like this, or else it does hurt. What they can do for future play styles.
Yeah, I mean, you make completely fair points there. But I mean, is that it from you? You all good?
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right, guys, let us know what you think in the comments, and like and save this video on the way out, and we will see you next time.
Dose.
Thanks, guys.